All right, folks, welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. This is our first solid album ranking in quite some time, and you're never going to believe who I'm digging up to help me do this one. Take a look, folks. Mr. David Hens, welcome.
Yeah, I know it's been like eight months.
Feels like longer than that in
I
some
know it does.
respects,
Yeah,
you know.
I know.
It's been so long, but it's great to have you back aboard here. And today's band that we're going to do is none other than Pearl Jam. Obviously, they just came out with new album Dark Matter this year, so it was an appropriate time to go through the catalog and rank them and see where the new album fell. We gave it a little time, from when it came out, to give us a more solid listening capabilities to it. So we just didn't judge it by our first listen and stuff. So how did you come about getting into Pearl Jam?
I got them right from the beginning. I remember going to get 10 on cassette the day it came out
Oh
when I
wow.
was a kid. Yeah, I was only I think I was 3 years old. I remember my mom taking me to the store to get the cassette. So
Nice. So right from the beginning.
yep.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when 10 came out. They used to play the heck out of it on the Fox, and then when they changed their format, they just kept a lot of those bands. They kept playing them in their playlists, and then obviously each album started coming out after that. You had Verses and Vitology, just some great stuff there. So by the time the Edge actually changed, the Fox changed the Edge, you actually had three albums of Pearl Jam out at that point.
Mhm.
So that was pretty good. And then all the other bands followed there. Um, all right, well, let's dig right in here. We're gonna rank all 12 of the studio albums, and let's go with we'll give you a two in a row here from each of us. We'll start off with 12 and 11. What do you got for us?
All right. Yeah, my number 12 is going to be Backspacer from 2009. I mean, I remember I was pretty into this album when it came out, but and that like the Fixer was a pretty good
Yeah.
first single off of the album. I mean, it's got definitely more upbeat like production, and just the songs are more optimistic than the previous few albums before that. They're I think when Obama got elected, that kind of changed Eddie's mindset from a writing standpoint. So he got a little more happy than from the Bush years before that, because they got overtly political, even more so than they were before, like in terms of like the some of the songs. But yeah, it's their shortest album too. I think it's only like 36 minutes. But I mean, Just Breathe is like the one song from that album that really stands out to me. It's a great live song. That's like the one gem from that album I would go back to. But yeah, I mean, I remember hearing those songs a lot and listening to it back then, but I don't like it doesn't really it's not a bad album. It's not one I go back to often.
Right. All right, so that's your number 12. And what do you got for your
And
number
my
11?
number 11 is Binaural from 2000.
Oh,
I mean, oh wait, I remember this album coming out, but honestly, I wasn't like in the '90s. Pearl Jam was like one of my favorite bands. I had to have every album as soon as it came out. But then
mhm.
I got into other stuff, and my taste changed a little bit, and I kind of got away from Pearl Jam. So I didn't really get this album as like a full new release. I probably got it like 3 or 4 years later.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, Light Years is a really good song. Insignificance is good, but a lot of the stuff I listen to it, but I don't really remember it afterwards. It's I don't know. They changed their production style a little bit. It's not as memorable, but I do have this live album from the 2000 tour that's even better. I think the songs live sound better than they do on the album, so I
Mm.
think that kind of bumps it up a little bit for me. But yeah, it's not a bad album. It's just not one like it's when I listen to Pearl Jam, that's not the style I want to hear. So
All right, very good. All right, so I'm gonna give you my number 12, and gonna go back to the year 1996, and that's gonna be for No Code. Um, the one interesting thing about this band is every single studio album they made has reached at least the top five. I mean, I don't think there's hardly any bands I could think off the top of my head that I can say that about.
mhm.
Every single one of their albums at least reached number five. They have I believe it's four or five number ones. And this one actually was one of the number ones, and it was platinum. Um, this album for me though, it just doesn't have enough highlights on it, which is kind of what brings it down in my estimation. Like you said, it's not the first one I reach for, when I want to hear some Pearl Jam. Now that they got 12 albums out, it makes it harder. Especially when, like me and you, we're listening to music constantly.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
other bands, other artists, and getting ready for other rankings. So it's really got to be something that I can just slap on if I'm doing a project or something and give it a really good listen. But this one is to me is just the weakest of the albums from them. Not saying that it's not a bad album though. It's actually not bad at all. It just doesn't resonate with me as much as the other albums do. I would say probably the highlight on here would be Smile. That's one of the big ones from this album. And Around the Bend, I like that one, Present Tense. But it seems like it has a lot more songs that are kind of just okay as opposed to, solid songs. So that's what I got for my number 12. My number 11, I'm agreeing with you. Binaural, 2000, uh, only went gold. So that's the first album that drummer Matt Cameron plays on with the band. It reached number two. And Light Years was a good mention. That to me, I believe, is probably the best song on the album. But I also do like Sleight of Hand and Nothing as It Seems. Those ones are pretty good. Um, just a little bit better than No Code, but it just hasn't reached. I haven't reached my sweet spot yet for the band. A couple more albums down the road, then you'll really hear me
Mhm.
going how great these albums are because you can't stop talking about them sometimes. But for me, that's my number 11 as well, Binaural. And let's bring it back to you for your number 10 and 9.
Yeah, my number 10 is going to be Riot Act. Again, it's not an album I got as a new release because I kind of gotten out of Pearl Jam a little bit in the early 2000s. But like going back and listening to it recently, I mean, there's some good stuff on there. Crop Duster, I really like. Bush Leaguer was the big political song from that album.
Yep.
And then, yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. I think I was reading up some like old archival reviews of the album, and a lot of people really liked it at the time, but other people said they didn't like the deviation in style. But yeah, I mean it's a solid album. Like I said, like none of these albums are terrible. It's just not all of them have like instantly memorable songs. I think if I spent more time with the album, might like it more. But right now, it's number 10 for me.
Okay.
And then my number 9 is going to be Gigaton from 2020. I think it's a really solid album. I think the biggest problem was it came out right at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was kind of just like it was the first like as soon as everything shut down and all the stores were closed, this was the first album I ordered because it just the release coincided right like the exact moment. And I remember getting it delivered from Record Archive in Rochester because they were the ones that were still doing like shipping orders.
Hmm.
So yeah, the Dance of the Clairvoyance, I remember hearing it right away and I was wondering what this is. They were kind of going with more of an electronic sound, which, but now that I like 4 years later, I think I like it more. Like I went back and listened to the whole album again within the last couple of weeks, and it's pretty good. But I mean, with this and Lightning Bolt. I mean, they kind of sound similar in a sonic way. Like the productions are very similar. So they're in that whole period that where they were just kind of. I mean, they changed with Andrew Watt on the new album. But yeah, I mean, there's some pretty good stuff on here, like Super Blood Wolf Moon. They did some cool music videos for that. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, Pearl Jam just became one of those bands where they were putting out albums, but they didn't really seem to make like a big, like mainstream or commercial impact as they did in the early days. So like
Hmm.
this album came out, and I'm sure a lot of people, even if they were Pearl Jam fans, then maybe they didn't even listen to it because they like the tour got postponed for like 2 years after the pandemic. So I think the immediacy, had they toured on it right then and there, I think it would have been a little bigger than it was.
Yeah, I think they did lose out on the touring aspect of it for
Yeah.
sure. And that's how they usually, because they like to really mix in the songs from the new albums to
Yeah.
help promote. Because sometimes it's like I think that's one of the albums too that when you see those songs live,
Hmm.
they just sound so
Yeah.
much fresher. And that's just a shame that like you said that they couldn't tour till later on down the road for that one. All right, so well, my number 10 is going to be 2006, and that's going to be none other than the self-titled Pearl Jam album. And yeah, I went gold, hit number two, so they were still at least that's significant that they were still, it's one of their final albums, one of the last few to actually reach the status there of gold or platinum. Um, yeah, it definitely this album is definitely I remember when it came out and I got it, man, I'm thinking, oh man, this is great. I seem to like it a lot more when I first got it because I was playing it all the time but like you said, going back and listening to it down the road, I think the songs that I really liked back then are still there. I mean, I like Marker in the Sand, Parachutes, um, Come Back, the lead off track, Life Wasted. Um, but it just not enough to really propel it any higher than number 10 for me. So that's where I got for that. And number nine, we agree again. I've got Gigaton.
Yeah.
It's, it's amazing, ain't it?
Yeah. Mhm.
2020, same things that we just talked about. The touring killed it. Did reach number five once again, another top five album. Um, yeah, I tell you, I'm not a fan of the Dance of the Clairvoyants. I don't,
Yeah.
those don't. I listened to it. I'm going, what in the world, man? Did it stick out like a sore thumb to me
Hmm.
compared to the
Yeah.
rest of the
Yeah.
album?
And it was the first single too. So
Yeah, I saw that, and I wasn't.
yeah.
I didn't even remember. Like you said, I bought the album. Got it. I think I got it through Amazon.
Mhm.
It came like maybe got it a month after it came out.
Mhm.
With the pandemic going on, a lot of things were a lot different back then when it first hit, like you said. Um, so I got it through Amazon and I listened to it a couple times, and the songs that really stood out to me still stand out. I really love 7 O'clock. That song really kicks some butt there. I like that one. Comes and Goes is another highlight for me. And River Cross, the ending track on the album, I really enjoy too. But yeah, Dance of the Clairvoyants definitely is, I guess it's an acquired taste, like a couple of their other songs in their catalog. Like the one from the movie soundtrack that people don't like, although it's popular.
Mhm.
But that's what I got. Number nine, Gigaton.
Okay, yeah. My number eight is Lightning Bolt from 2013. Again, it's an improvement over Backspacer. I think the songs are better. Like I Mind Your Manners is great up tempo, got a lot of energy to it. These vocals really kind of feral on that one. Sirens is a pretty decent ballad. Pendulum, Swallowed Whole is good. Infallible. And I remember they came to Buffalo on that tour, but I missed it. So I was bummed out about that because I got married that same week, so I couldn't go. And then my number seven is the self-titled album with the avocado on the cover. I think I've heard a lot of people call it avocado. I don't know if that's the official title, but yeah, that's yeah. I like Severed Hand has been my favorite song off that album since it came out. Gone is another good one, but yeah. So those are my first seven.
Okay, all right. And my number eight is also Lightning Bolt, and it came out in 2013. It's number one album. It's actually though the first album of theirs not to at least go gold. So that's kind of where, I think that's where the music industry itself just kind of started shifting more towards streaming.
Yeah.
And then, they kind of took a while to try to get these streaming charts to kind of go into, so they had a better feel of how these albums were actually selling and stuff. But
Mhm.
um, so Lightning Bolt, pretty much the same things that you said. For me, actually, I like the way the album ends almost better than the rest of the album. Like Sirens was definitely a good call. I really like that one. Let the Records Play, and then it kind of the last two songs I feel really end the album on a strong note with Yellow Moon and Future Days. Um, but I just don't have a lot more to say about the beginning of the album, which kind of is a surprise because when I first got this one, I thought it was a lot better than I remembered it, and then when I went back and listened to it some more, it just didn't seem to quite have the same impact.
Hmm.
So, well, that's what my number 8 is, the same as yours, Lightning Bolt. Number 7, we are going brand new album, Dark Matter, 2024. So, just came out this year, but number 7 isn't bad. When you got 12 albums out there, this album hit number 5. I think they're hurting themselves with their touring for the albums now that they finally, this is like the second album now they released since 2020,
Hmm.
but they're only playing like limited areas. They're doing like two shows in a city, and they're
Yeah.
not doing like widespread touring anymore. So I think they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot because I think if they were able to do the type of tours they were doing back in 2003 and 2013 even,
Hmm.
or 2010, at least
Yeah.
I think they'd hit more areas and there's
Hmm.
a better chance they're going to sell more albums.
Yeah.
You know?
2010 was the last time I saw him. So.
Yeah. So I saw him in 2013,
Hmm.
but out of the shows that I've seen, I would have to say that's probably my weakest. But I don't think anything would ever top the first one I saw back in 2003 when they played HSBC Arena. That show was really, really long, and it was just really, really, really good. I mean,
Yeah, they're
this
they're
is
they're not really. I know I've looked at it in recent years. They're not really playing those really long encores anymore, where they do like 7 or 8 songs.
yeah, yeah. They cut out a lot of that. I think more or less it's probably to help save them and preserve them down the road because it's hard to
Mhm.
do that
Yeah.
on a
Mhm.
tour. Although now they're playing less shows.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I remember at the 2010 show, they went past 11 o'clock, so the arena turned all the lights on, kind of like killed the whole vibe of the show. So yeah, Mike McCready was playing the outro to Yellow Ledbetter on stage all by himself, and then they killed the mood by turning the lights on. So
Hmm. Yeah, I think that was they had to do that to signify that the band was starting to run past time.
yeah.
I think that was the problem. I remember the
Mhm.
2003 show went really, really late. If I'm not mistaken, I think it went past midnight.
Yeah.
And I remember Eddie was announcing that Mike McCready was picking up the tab for the fine for that night.
Mhm. Yep.
Because they get these guys, a lot of people don't realize, but these guys
Yeah.
go past the time, they get fined.
Hmm.
But they didn't care back then.
Yeah. Mhm.
So yeah, interesting there. So yeah, so Dark Matter, getting back to that matter at hand here. Some really good stuff on here. I like Wreckage. The song Dark Matter was good. Waiting for Stevie. But for me, the highlight on the album is the closing song, Setting Sun. Just a classic Eddie Vedder vocal. Great way to end it. Nice slow song. The album itself, I think a lot of people are kind of giving the production a bad name for it. I wouldn't go that far. I think the production is okay. And I mean, it's not their top produced album ever, but I don't think it's their worst either. But yeah, it's just that this album, how often will I reach for it going forward? I don't know. It's hard to say. It's a good album though. That's the only thing I do know, and it made on my top list of albums for this year as well, and I believe it's
Mhm.
on yours as well.
Yep.
So we did both agree that this is definitely one of the best albums released this year, regardless. It's just that when you're ranking Pearl Jam's albums against their other albums, it might not fall as nicely into place as we will see with their top 5 or something like that. They got some really great albums coming up here we're going to be discussing. So Dark Matter, number 7.
My number 6 is going to be No Code. Yeah, you already talked about it. So yeah, it was their first album with Jack Irons on drums, from Red Hot Chili Peppers previously. I mean, the band was going through a big fight with Ticketmaster at the time too, so that prevented from playing a lot of places that they would normally play because they had limited venue access, and then that led to a lot of counterfeit tickets being sold and stuff too. But yeah, the album, like, there are no hits on the album. It's kind of one of those albums that I had to go back and listen to. Like, I think it's aged somewhat well, like it's better over time. But yeah, like Present Tense, I really like a lot. But it's not. It's one of those albums you just have to put on and kind of listen to it because there's nothing, I don't think, from that album that got played on the radio. Or at least maybe if it did at the time, it doesn't anymore. But yeah, so it's a decent album.
All right. Yeah, what do you got for number 5?
My number five is going to be Dark Matter.
Okay.
When I first heard the title track on the radio, I was a little skeptical. But when the whole album came out and I got to listen to the whole thing, it really grew on me like throughout the year. The more I listened to it, and it's I know you mentioned the production not being like a lot of people don't like it, but I mean for me it doesn't bother me. I think of all the albums that Andrew Watts worked on in the last few years, this is the one where the production bothers me the least because like I wasn't crazy what he did with Ozzy, and
Mhm.
I didn't really think that he did a great job with the Stones album from last year either. But for this album, I think like for me the key was they let Mike McCready solo again. I think there's a lot of good guitar parts on here. They kind of let him loose where he hadn't really played like this in a while. So like yeah, I really like React, Respond. Wreckage is a great ballad. Scared of Fear. Yeah, the title track and I mean Setting Sun's a great way to close the album. Yeah, I didn't know it was going to be a top five, but yeah, it's definitely earned its spot.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely thought it was definitely one of the better albums out of the year for sure. There was a lot of music released this year. I was really
Mhm.
when I went through to try to rank them all, man, that was a tough thing to do. But we'll see what comes out in 2025 for sure. There's gonna be a lot of
Yeah, I, I bought a ton this year. I think when I looked at it, I bought like 40 albums.
just from this year alone. You mean? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's probably the most I've bought in any year in a long time,
Yeah.
no doubt.
Hmm.
All right, so that is that for that, and I'm going with my number six. I hope people won't kill me for this one, but I'm going with the 1993 album Versus. So that's my number six. Seven times platinum, hit number one. Um, the usual highlights, the hits, are the ones you hear on the radio, Daughter, Dissident, Elderly Woman Behind the Counter. WMA definitely stands out. I really like that song. Um, I don't know. The rest of the songs, I think Rats is kind of crazy. It's a weird song, a little different there. But like you said, Go and Animal, a good opening 1-2 punch for sure. Um, I've seen a handful of these songs performed live. They still play a lot off this album in concert here and there over the course of a tour. So, um, I don't know, just not quite as strong as the ones I got in front of it. That's all. So that's my number six. And number five, this album probably gets, I don't know. I see a lot of rankings to see, where this album fell because I wanted to see what people's opinions were. And that's Riot Act. Um, to me, I love this album. This is one of my favorite Pearl Jam albums by a mile, probably because it was the first tour I got to see with them. And, I don't think there was a better moment for me, at least up to this point. I only saw four shows, but up to this point, having them open up with Love Boat Captain was just to me was just great. I mean, a lot of people don't even give that song a lot of credit, but in the opening slot, I felt it just went over so well for being like the first song I ever got to see them do live, and it just stuck with me throughout my whole Pearl Jam career here with my four shows that I've seen. Um, that's just one of the best songs I like on the album. Like you had mentioned on it. Where did it end up on your list again?
Number 10.
10. Okay. So it was a little bit
Mhm.
lot higher up there, like double. Um, Save You, Can't Keep. I think you mentioned a couple of those. I Am Mine, obviously, was one of the big songs off of it. Um, I think it's just a little too long. It's actually, if you look at it from all the Pearl Jam albums, it has the most songs on than any Pearl Jam album at 15 tracks. So I think if they would have cut off three tracks, maybe, that would have gave it an overall. It's just a little too long in the tooth, I think. That could be one of the reasons because a lot of people aren't as keen on the songs. The less songs you like on an album, the longer it is,
Mhm.
surely you're not going to like it as much as the other albums.
Yeah.
So I think they just overdid it with that one. That's all. But to me, it'll always hold a good place in my heart, and it's locked in at number five for me. So we're going down to our top four.
All right. Yeah. My number four is going to be Yield from '98. Again, this is like at the tail end of like the classic period for Pearl Jam for me, where I kind of started listening to other bands after that. But yeah, I like Given to Fly is a classic. I love Do the Evolution. You know, it's a great album. I mean, it's one I can go back and listen to quite frequently and not have any issues or any skippable tracks with. So, all right, yeah, my number three is 10, the debut from '91. Again, I think there's a certain with the radio and the music videos and everything. I just in with since I've been listening to it since the day it came out, there's kind of a saturation level in a lot of ways with just Even Flow, Alive, Jeremy. I mean, Black I can never get sick of because I that's one of my probably my top five songs from the whole catalog. But yeah, and Release has become my favorite song off the album through the years. And I Love Once is an amazing song live, as is Porch and Why Go. I mean, I could like these songs are like part of my musical DNA because I've been listening to it for so long. But again, when if you get the 2009 Redux, it gives you all the bonus tracks too, and like State of Love and Trust, Breath and a Scream. I love those songs just as much as anything on the original album. So I mean, I when I listen to the album, I feel like I need to listen to all the like the outtake tracks too because there's a lot of great stuff there. And even Footsteps from that period is another great song that didn't get on the album. So, but yeah, it's a great record for a reason. I mean, it put them on the map. So,
Oh yeah.
but yeah,
All right. Yeah. 10. Yeah, I was surprised. I thought it'd be, well, especially when the way you said it, that was the first you got it. You were with the band right from the beginning. But
yeah.
I can see what you're saying, though. I can understand. But still, number three, can't go
Mhm.
wrong. Definitely. I don't think anybody in their right mind would have this album out of the top five, even,
Mhm.
on a
Yeah.
ranking. I mean, it's
Mhm.
unheard of. All right. So my number four, I don't think we mentioned yet, and that's going back to 1994, the third album, Vitology. And yeah, great album. Corduroy, man, oh man, nothing like seeing that song live, I'll tell you that much. Just a great song. Um, you know, Better Man, that's one of those ones you hear all the time. I don't
Mhm.
think that it's a good song, but if you want to dig into some of the lesser known tracks that are really good, I would recommend Nothing Man, um, Immortality, uh, also Not For You. That's another one that got a little airplay there. And of course, I've seen a handful of these live. Spin the Black Circle. Just some really good stuff here. This album is definitely one I reach for again and
Mhm.
again. It's definitely one of the albums that stands out really good for me here. And it went 5 times platinum, reached number one. And what else can you say about it? But that's my number four. And this is probably gonna be a surprise considering where this album landed on your list here. I got three. I got Backspacer, and I was actually kind of surprised because I think when I set up the initial rankings, I started doing these rankings on Pearl Jam, I would say a little over a year ago. And that was obviously before the new album came out,
Mhm.
Dark Matter. And this album was probably, I was looking for my sheets, I couldn't find them, but I would say it was in the bottom four, on the either like 11 through 8, somewhere in there. And now all of a sudden it's number three. And when I was listening back to it, man, I couldn't believe how many great songs that that I still remembered. You mentioned Just Breathe. That's just probably one of the most classic Pearl Jam songs there are, and seeing it live is just great. And I really like though Amongst the Waves, Unthought Known. Those are two really standout. Force of Nature, The Fixer. I think you mentioned that one.
Mhm.
Um, just some great stuff on this album. There's really not um, not too much filler on this one at all. There's only a couple songs that I would skip over, and that's about it. Great album, and I really like it. It's definitely, I didn't expect it to be this high, but that's where I got it at number three. All right, what do you got for two and one? I'm anxious here to see what you
Yeah,
got.
all right. My number two is Vitology. This is kind of where their issues with Ticketmaster began. Were on this tour,
Eh,
so yeah, I think they steadily improved as they went along. So like as great as 10 was, I think they were conscious of not trying to replicate 10, like do a carbon copy of it. So you get more variety as the albums that followed.
mhm.
And like as you mentioned, Better Man is a classic. I mean, it's played to death, but when you see it live, the songs, I mean, the crowd still sings along. It's a cool moment. But yeah, Spin the Black Circle is a classic. It's just there's a, and I always liked the album cover. I thought it was kind of classy design.
It's like you got a friend there.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. And then my number one is Versus. I think it's for me, it's the perfect follow up to 10. I love it. The energy is amped up. Daughter is great. Rearview Mirror, I think, is my favorite song off the album. That's a great live song. Elderly Woman is great to hear live. Glorify G, sometimes it gets ragged on, but I don't mind it that much. It's okay. Yeah, Go and Animal. I mean, it's just great. Rats, WMA, Dissident. I mean, a lot of these songs get played on the radio today, and you know, it's definitely become my favorite album. Like 15 years ago, it probably wasn't my number one, but today it's become my favorite Pearl Jam album.
Yeah, I really like it when you look back and you go, man, this album, I guess sometimes you get an appreciation for an album as time goes on, and then
Mm-hmm.
others you fall out of favor on. You know, a lot of people always you hear a lot of the things when people review albums, they say it sounds dated, you know, stuff like that. It sounds, you know, not like it doesn't sound as fresh as it once did. And then people tend to just right away push it aside and knock it out. But like you said, these albums, these first three, so basically those are your top three, the first three albums, just in different
Mm-hmm.
orders that you know, other people might have them, but it just goes to show you how strong those albums are and what they mean to you because that's where they landed on here. All right, so yeah, that's let's finish this off. My number two. So I got two albums left here. My number two is probably not going to come as any surprise. 1998 Yield, and yeah, this album is definitely one of those albums that has really grown on me over the recent years, and as time has gone on. You know, Given a Fly. I don't think there's a better song live for them than that song to see that one live. I think at this
Mm-hmm.
particular time, because the last few times I seen it, it was just simply amazing. And it just lifted, it's like it lifted the whole crowd and just the whole scene, if you were there, the whole atmosphere of the show, it just picked it up from like a five and knocked it over 10 without even doing anything. As soon as the beginnings of the song started, it's just like pandemonium, you know, it's just
Mm-hmm.
amazing how that song is definitely what it can do. It's so powerful. Low Light is one of the ones that's really another standout for me. All Those Yesterdays is the album closer. Brain of Jay, I've seen that one a few times. That one they still play a lot at shows. Faithful, um, Duty Evolution, MFC. Just a lot of great songs on this album, which only adds to the you know, to my reasons why I like it. It's just a great, powerful album, and that's what I got at number two. Yield, definitely one of the best the band has ever made, and of course, number one. Hate to be in the majority here because I hate to be, oh, you're just following everybody else. No, it's how can you argue with 10? For me, I just that album is definitely just to me, they hit it right out of the park on the first album. And like you said, you know, there's you get sick. Sometimes you get sick of hearing these songs. You know, I've been to four Pearl Jam shows, and there's only two songs that they played at all four shows. So they really mix it up pretty good.
They
And
do,
the,
yeah.
yep, and of course you probably can guess which two songs they played at all four shows, and that's none other than Even Flow and Alive. You
Mm-hmm.
know, what else? Be interesting to go to one of those concerts without. I mean, I remember seeing Aerosmith once where they didn't do Dream On. That was a very rare occurrence that hardly ever happened, but it did. And it was a full show. It wasn't like a partial set or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like you mentioned, Release, that's another song that's just has grown on me over the years. You know, it always ended the album. I never really played a lot of the later part of the album. because for me, all the songs that I really liked were always in the beginning part of the album. So Black, yeah, hands down, Black is definitely the best song on this album by a mile. To see that one live is definitely worth the price of admission. Let's just put it that way. Um, Jeremy, of course, is, a good song. Even
Mhm.
flow, like you said, these songs might be played to death, but you got good songs like Porch and Once. It's just the solid album from beginning to end, really. And that's where I got it. No arguments. Number one. Anything you want to add about Pearl Jam?
I would say this MTV Unplugged release is
Hmm.
great. That's their version of Black is even better, almost better than the album version. Eddie really gets into the vocal on that. I don't know if you ever heard it, but it's
Mm.
good. I don't know if they I think they finally did release it on CD, but initially it was a vinyl only release in 2019.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah,
What year was it recorded?
I think it was 91. It's like
Okay.
right when 10 came out.
Interesting. Okay. All right. You got Lost Dogs?
I don't have that one. No,
No.
no.
It's got a lot of songs on there. It's like it's got like Yellow Ledbetter stuff like that,
Yeah.
but it's another. It's got a lot of good hidden gems on there that you probably know half of them or at least most of them anyways. But yeah, some real good stuff on there.
Yeah, a lot of my music is. I'm in the process of like reorganizing everything, so I got a lot of stuff scattered. But I was trying to pull some stuff out. Like I got this original CD single of Jeremy with the kid with the gun on the cover. It's kind of controversial by today's
Oh
standards,
wow.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting when you can dig up some of this stuff
mm,
that's rare that you don't see a lot
yeah,
of for sure. All right. Well, that was definitely an interesting album ranking, for to say the least. Just 12 solid albums. Like you said, not a bad album. It's just that some are just better than others. But some of these album rankings we do, as we done in the past with Mr.
mm,
Tom Jennings and Davey Cretin and some of these other guys, some of these albums right away you know which one's going to be the worst by some of these bands,
yeah,
just because it was a
mm,
poor album for whatever reason. But Pearl Jam, I didn't know how these were going to shake out until I actually went through each one and then sorted through everything to determine how it ended up. And then, definitely an interesting ranking. I'm glad we did it. Appreciate you coming aboard there. If you want to tell everybody about how they can read your stuff and your website and everything.
yeah. It's music and other drugs. It's www.music the letter N otherdrugs.com. I just published my top 10 albums of 2024. I have my top 10 movies of 2024 also for if people are into that sort of thing. And then I focus on a lot of interviews and reviews throughout the year. So
All right, sounds good. Yeah. Make sure I'll put the link in the video there once we get it all posted. And sounds good. Yeah, thanks for coming aboard and stay tuned for much more. We'll be doing a lot more rankings probably in the winter months because we'll be a little bit more free probably than
yeah,
summer. Once summer comes, it gets crazy for everybody for sure.